Hi, Holger. I see you're waving at me.
Hello, how are you doing?
Great.
Greetings from Berlin.
Hi, I'm happy to have you here. As I was saying, well, we have all these frameworks that help us to actually just completely switch from, let's say, working in isolation to a collaborative effort. So thanks to agile design thinking and maybe even design sprints, we could make design accessible to everyone. And therefore, it also comes in some sort of commodity. And the question is here, if design becomes a commodity, where does this leave us designers? And on the other way around, if designers can do everything, what should we be focusing on? Finally, where can we bring the biggest impact as designers? These are some questions that our speaker today will be sharing with you and walking us through. And he has been a designer for over 20 years. He started from front-end development and now he's into strategic design. He has created his own design framework that is really renowned, where you can really focus on how to make impact in a company at different scales, from startups to large corporations. I'm really excited about this talk, and I really think we can learn from him today. Other than that, he is actually from Germany, like he just mentioned. He loves to play the guitar. He's a fantastic singer, and he actually has 2 albums now live in Spotify and in Apple Music. So feel free to check it out. I'm really excited to introduce you to our first speaker, Holger Eggert.
Thank you very much. And again, thanks for the invitation. Thank you for having me. My name is Holger. As you already mentioned, I'm a designer here in Berlin. I'm doing this for over 20 years now, and I'm gonna talk about what I've learned over these over 20 years now. So to start with, I'm gonna show you something I don't usually show, but so be it. This is me. This is me 20 years ago, and this is me today. And something happened in between, not just I grew older. I started in the late 90s, and then it was design, and then it was front end, lots of Flash and stuff you wouldn't do today anymore, interactive CD-ROMs and stuff like this. Then like smartphones happened, and everybody was doing apps. And then other stuff happened, artificial intelligence, voice interaction, lots of things happened over these 20 years. So what I did over these 20 years was more and more grow into where do I have impact on a strategic level. And this is something every designer will tell you. Every designer will say, hey, I want to work more on a strategic level. I want to be in charge, if you will. And that's what this talk is going to be about. And designers usually say, I want to have a seat at the table. And how do you get a seat at the table? And even designers I work with, the bigger question would then be, once you do have a seat at the table, what do you do there? You're in a room with management, with like business consultants, people throwing around numbers, and all of a sudden you're in there as a designer. Should you throw around numbers as well? Do you need to do financial calculations in Excel? Probably not. That's not why you became a designer. But how do you have a seat at the table? How do you have impact in these situations? And how can you as a designer work in these situations and show impact on a strategic level? That's what I want to talk about. So what I do, what my job description is strategic design. And that's a loaded term already, because when you ask people what is strategic design, ask 10 people, you will get 20 different answers. And they're all somewhat right and somewhat wrong. And I'll show you my try at a definition today. The problem is many people think, oh, the strategic designers, they're the ones doing the research. And yeah, that's not exactly wrong, but it's also selling themselves short, and I don't like this. So I tried explaining this. So my explanation number one, my first try doing this. Well, what actually is design? If it's strategic design, it's two things together, it's design and strategy. So what are these? What is design? The best definition I know, and that has worked well for me over the years, is design is the expression of an idea. This is similar to many definitions you will find out there, like Jared Spool is always saying it's the rendering of intent. That's also a good definition. I like the expression of an idea more because it's even more open. You need to have an idea and then you need to express it. These two words are in there and you need both. If you just have an idea, well, it's a pipe dream. Like, yeah, everybody has ideas. If you just express something and there's no idea behind it, well, then you did something, whatever it is. If you combine these two, you have an idea and then you express it. That's what design is. And that's what designers do. Designers, this is our job. This is what we're good at. We're good at coming up with ideas and expressing them. What is strategy? This is a great way to get managers sweating. If you're in a workshop or talk to like C-levels or whatever, ask them, hey, how would you define strategy? You would get wild answers. And again, some are right, some are wrong. You will never, at least in my experience, you never get one clear shot answer. It's usually a lot of stumbling around. So the best definition that I know and that worked very well for me is a strategy is a plan to achieve a goal. And again, there's two things in the sentence. You need to have a goal. And sometimes people say or think strategy is like setting goals, but that's only half the picture. A strategy is having a plan to achieve the goal. So you need to make sure you do have a goal. It would help if you have the right goal. And then how do you get to this goal? What's the plan achieving this? So if you take these four words, the expression of an idea and a plan to achieve a goal, and then I was like, yeah, this is what strategic designers do. But how exactly? People were asking, yeah, but why and what exactly is this supposed to be? And I started combining them in many different ways. And what I ended up with, if you cross this, then you end up with a plan to achieve an idea and the expression of a goal. What does this mean? Again, designers are good at coming up with ideas, but so is everybody else probably in an organization. You need to make sure you have the right idea, and you need to make sure you know how to achieve the right idea. And this is where designers come in. This is our bread and butter. This is doing research, synthesizing research, testing ideas, stuff like this, in order to achieve the right idea. So this is what designers do, a plan to achieve an idea. Then the expression of a goal. You have managers setting goals, which is fine. Like we need to ramp up production, we need to increase revenue, whatever. But how does this express itself? Can you make this goal tangible so others can understand it? Again, this is what designers do. This is our bread and butter, the expression of a goal. And this is already something that designers are good at and where designers can have an impact. So if you work with managers, if you work with C-levels or business people in general on all kinds of levels, you can help them. You don't need to be the one making all the decisions. That's sometimes what designers misunderstand as well. Like strategy is not necessarily being the one in charge or making all the decisions. Of course, it's nice if you can just announce something and everybody does it, but that's not necessarily the good part, actually. The good part is getting to an idea and expressing the goal and helping others in this. So if you work with management, you can tell them, hey, I can help you achieve an idea. I know how to do this. I can guide you through this process. We can do this together. We can validate an idea. The usual toolbox that designers would bring. They will already like you. That's great. The expression of a goal. Once you do have a goal, designers have a nasty habit of asking questions, which is great because then you're like, okay, this is the goal. What does it mean? And how would it look like? How would it express itself? Immediately, that's how you can bring value. Because if you can express a goal, this is like design as translation work, if you will, then others can understand the goal better. And if you can make everybody understand the goal, everybody will work towards this goal. And if you help managers doing this, they will already like you. So that's already something you can do once you do have a seat at the table, and something that designers are much better suited to, because that's our job, that's our nature, than maybe other people in such a context. So that's great. And then when I give this explanation, then people again ask, okay, but how exactly, what exactly does this mean? What do you do there? So I tried a different explanation. Strategic design is the intersection of product strategy and organizational strategy. That's a little bit stolen, not stolen, but as defined by the Helsinki Design Institute. These are the ones who coined the term strategic design. So product strategy, again, strategy, a plan to achieve a goal. So for the product, what is the goal? What is the plan to get there? And by the way, you can substitute the word product with like service or environment or any kind of value offering towards customers. So I'll stick to the word product in this presentation, but if you're a service designer or whatever you fancy calling yourself, it's all good. It's all part of this, like product as in the value offering. But that alone is usually not helpful. You need to work on the organization as well, and you need to do both at the same time. And this is the big shift what strategic design is bringing to the table. If you just do a great product, but the organization is not ready to do this, the product will fail. And there's many examples for this. On the other hand, like business consultants, they come into a company, they want to redo the whole organization. The product is still bad. So that's not helpful either. You need to do both at the same time. And if you do product strategy, that's innovation, like trying something new, making something better. Organizational strategy, that's transformation, bringing this innovation into the organization and making it sustainable, making it permanent. So how do you do this? At every point in a project where I'm working, I usually draw a map like this: product and organization, goal and plan. And I tell people, this is my job. And basically it's my job to make sure we have it, but it's all of our job to define this. We need an answer for each of these little squares, for each of these quadrants. At every given moment in a project, we need to know what's the goal for the product, what's the goal for the organization, and what's the plan to reach these goals for the product and the organization again. And if you start a project, you may not always know the answers. That's totally fine. Then we're again to designers can have a plan to achieve an idea. So the goal for a product at the beginning of a project may very well be we need to figure out what the goal should actually be. But if that's the goal for the start, totally fine. If you start a project and you do like user research, figure out what actually should we do here, then you can do this. And then you can set up a plan how to achieve this so that by the end, you know what you want to do for your project. Same for the organization. What do we need to do here so that we will be successful with our product offering? If you combine this with this is what business consultants would tell you. You have a purpose on top. Why are we in this world? Why is our organization here? From that, you derive the strategy. Again, strategy, a plan to reach a goal. And below this, tactics. What what do we do day to day? So if you take this view and combine it with the previous one, you can totally do this. So on all these levels, what's our purpose? What's the strategy? What are our tactics? Our day to day, how does it look like? For each of these levels, what's the goal for the product and what's the plan to reach this goal? And what's the goal for the organization? What's the plan to reach that? So you do this on different levels, on like flying levels, if you will, altitudes. So that's great. How do you define this? This is where I work with people. They usually have a target goal in mind. Like, we want to be here. This is our vision for the future, and that's all fine. And if they don't have it, I help them define this. Again, this is what designers can do. This is what we're good at. But I'm much more interested. What's the status quo? Where are we today? What's the target goal? What do we want to achieve? And what is this gap in between? This gap, this green arrow here, is for me the most interesting part, much less the target goal. The target goal is fine and it's good to have it, but I'm much more interested in the gap in between. What is the gap? What is the chasm we need to cross, if you will, for this target goal? And then I ask, why do we need to close this gap? What will close this gap? And how will we close this gap? And these questions, if you do this with management in a workshop or with everybody you work with, whatever the answer to this is golden, because that will inform your purpose, strategy, and tactics. So to put it together, you define the gap first. From this gap, you ask the why, what, and how. That will define your purpose, strategy, and tactics, which in turn will help you define for the product and the organization, again, the goal and the plan. So that's what I do. And again, I'm a freelancer. Sometimes I do projects where I'm in charge. Sometimes I do projects where I'm more like a coach for a team and they themselves are in charge, which is totally fine with me. I help them define this and I help them get through this. And how I do this is exactly what designers do. Ask a bunch of questions, define hypotheses, test them, the usual things. Again, a plan to achieve a goal, a plan to achieve an idea, and the expression of a goal. This is the toolbox that strategic designers bring to the table. So that was all good. That was all working well. And then this happened. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. From Mike Tyson, the boxer. I love this quote. Everybody has a plan, and then I punch them in the face. What he would say. I don't punch people in the face. He said it. So you can have the best plan in the world, but something may go wrong. And this happened to me, actually. And you know this expression, no plan survived contact with the enemy. There's a bunch of different ways to say this, like planning is everything, plans are nothing. This happened to me. I was doing a project, everything was going great until it didn't. I was coaching a team at a large company in Germany. They were developing a new software, and the actual development of the software was outsourced to another company. They promised, yeah, we can do all this. And the internal team, they were doing design and marketing and product management and all this. And at one point, it dawned on me, this will not work out. And I told the product manager, hey, I'm not sure this external company is able to deliver this product. And he was like, no, we launched. Like, the launch date was, I think, October 1st. We launched October 1st. And this was end of August. I'm like, I don't see this. If we're supposed to launch October 1st, we would have been much, much further along in this project. This is not going great. Maybe we need to move the launch date if we're supposed to do if we want to deliver everything that's supposed to be in scope for this product. And he was very adamant, and he became agitated and angry. No, you don't get it. We launch October 1st. And I'm like, with what? I don't see it. By the way, there's little more context to the story. I'm skipping this now. This was a one-on-one meeting. I didn't do this in a big round with everybody. You don't want to have harsh discussions with product managers in front of everybody else. You take them aside and then you talk to them. But still, he was very adamant. No, we launch October 1st. And this went back and forth a little, and I was like, well, I'm happy to help you there, but there's only so much I can do. And then he slipped up. Then he said something he maybe did not want to say out loud, which was, if we don't launch October 1st, I, meaning he, will not get his yearly bonus. So the launch date, October 1st, was part of his personal goals that he set up with his boss. And he said, my boss is very adamant. We set up this goal. I cannot go to her and change it now. I won't get my yearly bonus, which means I won't go on winter vacation with my family. So that's a problem. All of a sudden, it's no longer, is this project going great? Are we doing the right thing for the company and our customers? All of a sudden, it's just, will I have my winter vacation with my family? And that's a different discussion all of a sudden. So strategic designers call this, not just strategic designers, but this is called second order effects. You do something, it has an effect, and that again has more effects. So in this case, we're doing this project, and this has effects not just on the organization itself and its customers, but on this person personally. He will not get his bonus and his winter vacation. And this is a very small example. There's bigger examples, of course, as well. I'm happy to tell you more later if you want. But what I then said, well, you could have told me earlier this is so important, but not everybody will do. If you ask people, hey, what's your hidden agenda? What's your secret motivation? They're usually not forthright saying this, of course. So I started, how do we skip this? How do we get to this discussion earlier? So when I then did projects, I started with explaining what second order effects actually are and said, we need to define this early on. So if this is our project, what does this mean? And I stole this from like the business people. It's usually these 4 Ps: people, product, process, performance. If we do this project, what does it mean for the people in our organization and also for the customers outside of our organization or our partners or whoever is involved? If we do this project, what does it mean for the product? That's usually the easiest answer. If we do this project, what does it mean for our processes in our organization? Are there processes that need to be in place for this product to be successful? Think of like supply chain management, customer support, stuff like this, marketing. There's a bunch of things that usually happen around a project. And then performance. You can always translate performance with like KPIs or some form of measuring success. If we do this project, what does it mean for our KPIs? And then I had a discussion with everybody, or that's how I then switched to doing projects. Start with this discussion. Consider we doing this project. What does it mean for people, product, process, performance? And then listen to what they tell you, what they say. That's the best way I know how to uncover these hidden agendas, these motivations. Because everything you do has second order effects on everything else. And you want to make sure you cover this. You want to make sure everybody is ready for, let's say the project is successful. What does it mean for these 4 Ps? Or let's say this project is not successful. What does it mean for everything else? And at one point, I even started switching this around. So what I do now is when I do a new project, I start first with the second order effects. Let's define what does success mean for our people, our product, our process, and our performance. And then if you say take everybody and work our way backwards to if these are the second order effects we want to achieve, what should our project look like? What do we need to do in our project so that we can make sure in the end we actually achieve these second order effects? So that works very well for me. And this is, for me, a good way to do a project. And again, this is what designers can do. Designers, they can uncover motivations. We do this in our user research every day. They can ask stupid questions because stupid questions are usually the best questions. And if you just do like the 5 whys, for example, ask why all the time, you will uncover a lot of things, which is great. And sometimes management asks me, hey, like 10 years ago or so, the big buzzword, at least in Germany, was design thinking. And around the world, it was a bit sooner in the US, but in Germany, 10 years ago, design thinking was the hot thing. And managers asked me, hey, shall we roll out design thinking in our organization? And my standard answer is always don't roll out design thinking, roll out designers. They will help you do this stuff. They will be uncomfortable. They will ask questions you will not like. And they will themselves feel uncomfortable in like a management discussion when there's Excel sheets with financial calculation thrown around. And then you have a designer saying, I don't understand this calculation. That's good. That's what you want. And so with everything else, don't roll out design thinking, roll out designers. They will help you define these second order effects, and they will help you work your way from what second order effects do we want back to what should the project look like. So finally, in closing, my third explanation, this is the one that works best for me. This is also one that works at a cocktail party or something, and feel free to steal anything you see here today if you want. That's this: turn possibilities into a goal. You have a bunch of possibilities in front of you as a designer and also as an organization. You could, in theory, do everything. What exactly should you do? That's like this achieving a goal and expressing a goal, and then the plan to achieve an idea. Of all of this, what is the one goal we actually should focus on? And that's what designers are good at. If you have a goal, turn this goal into a plan. Okay, that's a goal. What do we do step by step by step by step so we can make sure we actually get there? And if you have a plan, this is again the organizational part, turn this plan into a system so that you not only achieve this once, but can achieve this over and over again. And that's what works best for me. So turn possibilities into a goal, turn a goal into a plan, and turn plans into a system. And I thank you for listening. So that's a framework for impact through design. My name is Holger Eggert. This is my email address. If you're interested, write me. Also, this is me on Twitter. I would love to be a friend on Twitter. And I thank you for listening. And thanks everybody for having me.
Thank you, Holger. Thank you for your great talk. I really enjoyed the advice that you have shared about how to bring a strategic deliverable, make more impact as designers, and get a seat at the table. I think there's a lot of designers out there that can really benefit from this advice. While I'm waiting for the first question to come up, maybe what advice would you give a designer who is struggling to get a seat at the table?
You will not get a seat at the table if you complain, hey, why am I not in this room? Why am I not part of this meeting? You will have a much better chance if you find someone who could be like a sponsor, like the product manager, for example, is usually a good idea, and show value to them. Again, this is what designers are actually good at. If there's a goal, you can express this goal, show this goal. And for a typical product, you could do like a prototype, depending on what the actual goal is. Showing this, expressing this, helping shape ideas through research. This is all standard designer toolbox. As soon as you show value to them, they will see you as a valuable contributor, and then they will get you at this table. They will invite you into this room.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for that. And I also really liked how you mentioned actually the dumbest questions are the best one. This is something I should also keep in mind for myself. So, yeah. Another question would be
Absolutely.
Another question would be, how do you think designers will impact business in the future?
Well, you can see this already, and you can extrapolate this. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, the big adage was, what can businesses learn from Apple? Because they're a very design-driven organization. Now it's not only Apple, it's very, very many businesses themselves. And if you say design-driven, that does not necessarily mean it's only the products are pretty, because that's the one part that's very obvious about Apple, and that's the one part where people misunderstood Apple all the time, because they do much more than just make pretty products. What you now see in a design-driven organization is an organization that exactly does what I just described. Don't just set out goals so that people can get their yearly bonuses. Make sure you have the right goals through research, through showing the impact of stuff, through defining these second order effects and making sure this actually brings us forward. And again, that's what designers are good at. That's what designers can do. So good organizations have designers in charge.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I hope there are other professionals in the room listening to your speech. I think it's very, very insightful. And maybe another question would be, which are the main challenges and barriers for design today, according to you?
It's actually, I'd say for the individual, it's not trying to do too much. If you are successful in doing this, you can get power hungry, and that's not helpful, because you need to include everybody, and you need to make sure you don't kick out the business people. They do valuable things. It's just that in the past, because nobody else was doing this, the business people or the business consultants thought they have to do all of this, and that's not always helpful. On another level, for a designer themselves, for me, it was always good to see yourself as a coach, even if you're working in an organization. Consider yourself a coach, even if you're just, quote unquote, just a designer, and try to coach everybody. Try to get everybody on board. Try to get everybody along. They understand what you do. You understand what they do. That's always been helpful. In the past, designers were always complaining, nobody cares what we do. Nobody understands what we do here all day. And I always said, well, did you try understanding what they do all day? Did you talk to the developers? Did you talk to the finance department, for example, about their job? And as soon as you start doing this, you can form a bond with these people, and you can help them. Even finance departments, they can benefit if you have a plan to achieve an idea, and if you can express a goal, for example.
So indeed, not being the big shot, but really continuously having this collaborative effort like you were mentioning.
Absolutely. Treat yourself or consider yourself more like a coach or like a facilitator. That's always been helpful.
Maybe one last question. How do you handle business people who want the security of numbers when design process inherently presents uncertainty?
I love this question. You have to live with uncertainty. Unfortunately, designers are very good at this. We're used to this. Business people, not so much. They're like, yeah, whatever, but we need to increase revenue by X% at the end of the year or something like this. All you can do is show them how you could achieve this and make sure they are on board with whatever you propose, and make sure you show up the risks. Like if, for example, you want to improve the product and you only have limited time to improve the product from design and development and everything else involved, that can only mean you will do so much, which has to reflect in the numbers. And as soon as you start having a conversation with them, hey, I cannot guarantee an increase of X% by the end of the year for revenue, because I see uncertainties, and these are what these uncertainties are. If you can enumerate them, if you can write these down and have a discussion with everybody on these uncertainties, then the business people in turn can help you maybe put a number to these uncertainties. If we, for example, we want to enter a new market segment, and we're not sure how these people will react to our product offering, there's a variance, and you can put a number to this. If we are successful in this new segment, that would mean X for our revenue. If we are not so successful, that would mean Y for our revenue. So you can define the uncertainty. The number of people can calculate this, and then it's quote unquote a calculated risk, and that's already something that will make them much more comfortable.
So really managing expectations as well, and using them with their strengths, which is calculating the risks that you will identify for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Holger, for sharing your talk and for giving us some time of your day today. I will now move on to the next speaker, but I will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you.